Very much.
Mr. Chairman.
Honourable Chris Fenderson.
I want to begin by thanking Mr Henare for his outstanding chairing of the Maori Affairs Select Committee. Business is always conducted very efficiently through that committee and reports back to the House as quickly as possible, and I acknowledge his leadership in that regard. Well, Foreshore and Seabed, which is actually part of the vote Attorney General, which Mr Parker didn't bother to speak about, was an outstanding piece of legislation, a tribute to Mrs Turia more than anyone, because it removed a grave injustice that had been perpetrated in 2003 by Helen Clark, who then trots off to the United Nations and pontificates about human rights. But anyway, let's come back to the record of this government in the last 12 months. As Mr Henare said, 15 mandates, 5 terms of negotiations, 4 agreements in principle, a record 10 deeds of settlement, 6 settlement bills that have been referred to that excellent members' select committee, and 2 bills passed. It's hard to know where to begin with the highlights, because every signing of a deed of settlement is a highlight. But in Te Tauihu, as the member for Te Tai Tonga would know, 3 deeds of settlement were signed in late 2010, and I thank her for her excellent contribution to making that happen. On the East Coast, we signed deeds of settlement with Ngāi Manuhiri, Ngāti Porou, the great Ngāti Porou, and I see Mr Horomia has made a wonderful contribution in terms of turning up at least to signings, and Ngāti Pahuera. In Tāmaki, a vexed area that between them Margaret Wilson and Mark Burton had completely messed up. We signed deeds of settlement with Ngāti Manuhiri on the 21st of May. We've initialled a deed of settlement with Ngāti Whātua o Kaipara and others are to follow. In the Central North Island, we signed with Ngāti Makino and AIPs signed with Ngāti Rangawewahi and Tapawika, and again I acknowledge the wonderful help of the member for Waiariki, Mr Flavel. Ngāti Rangawewahi is of course his iwi. Introduction of legislation completing the Waikato and Waipa River co-governance arrangements and recognitions of deed of mandate with those wonderful people in the Taranaki iwi, Te Atiawa Taranaki and Ngāruahine. So much work, such enjoyable work. I would like to think bipartisan work, and I do want to acknowledge Mr Shane Jones, because you have, that honourable member has provided some considerable assistance in matters in the far north and with Ngāpuhi, and I have to say I'm hardly the fountain of all knowledge on these matters, neither is he, but and his younger brothers made a great contribution as well through Te Apori, but I do acknowledge the help that I've had from time to time from Kelvin Davis and from Shane Jones. I appreciate it. So there are challenges, and one of them is this vexed issue of overlapping claims, nowhere more apparent than in the Te Tauihu area. And also a big challenge that this government faces is the issue of land bank assets, because places like Tokanui Hospital and the property in Petone decaying before our eyes, and something needs to be done to ensure that these properties are either chosen by the settling iwi at an early stage or put into a position where they can be put on the open market, because it really is unsatisfactory, as that television program indicated last year, that places like Tokanui Hospital are left in that state. In fact, when one visits Tokanui Hospital and places like that, it's like a Marie Celeste experience. You walk in and find even the beds and the chairs are left behind. And it's most unfortunate that iwi have to take these properties over in that state. Kimberley's another example in the area of Mrs Turia, where the property has been basically land banked for some time. Something needs to be done there in order to determine its future. So there are challenges in this area, but it is a bipartisan area. I'm grateful to all members on both sides of the House for their considerable assistance as we've worked through these issues. It's wonderful work, and it's a real privilege to be the Minister with responsibility in this area. So the challenges are before us, but I think we're making good progress.
Question is that vote treaty negotiations stand part of the schedule. Those who are of that opinion will say aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. The question now is that vote agriculture and forestry stand part of the schedule. Sue Kedgley.